Good afternoon and welcome to the Wavy Digital Desk. I'm your host, Sarah Goode, and we're hearing that there's going to be an early spring. That's the news from Phil, just on Groundhog's Day. What is this going to do to seasonal affective disorder? Just going to help people a little bit earlier? Is it not going to be as perfect? Are people still going to have symptoms? We're also going to discuss, what goes into people having seasonal affective disorder. People say in reports it affects, millions of people in the United States and much more in women than men. We have Angela Barco here today from Riverside. She is going to be speaking with us about, what this condition is, what does it mean for people in the community. She's from Riverside, Bruton Avenue Family Practice, and she's here to discuss, what occurs, in people when this happens and how to seek treatment. So I'm going to bring her on now. Angela, good afternoon. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know it might not be as simple as saying, spring's coming early and everyone's seasonal affective disorder is going to, cut off a few weeks early. I know that it's not as simple as that, but, I am curious the link and the relationship, between people, especially, in this area and experiencing some of these things, especially we all know waking up when it's dark, getting home when it's dark, not being able to go outside, not being able to, be in fresh air the same way. So, I guess to start, it's known as winter depression. It's called SAD, which seems to be fitting. But what is seasonal affective disorder?
Yeah, seasonal affective disorder is actually a form of depression that relates to the changes in the seasons, typically in the winter months that you just explained, or what we would call the winter blues. Not only with the season and the weather that can contribute to the depression, it's very cold outside, the skies are gray, the sun is not shining, so we become more sluggish, not really wanting to go outside and then, enjoy that time. But also, taking into consideration the past, when seasonal holidays, this could be more of an exacerbation of, potential patients that have had, depression and whatnot. Um, they could have mourned the anniversary of a loss of a family friend or family member, and so that could be a dark time for them, so that's why they call it more of a seasonal affective disorder.
And, I know that our winter here has been up and down in terms of temperature, in terms of what we've gotten. I know that everyone watching, I'm sure they felt it too. Right now, we're in a bit of a more of a cold spurt. So you're experiencing more of that, winter sort of symptoms of wanting to stay inside, wanting to sort of just, keep warm or watch TV or whatever that feeling is. But in terms of the symptoms that come with seasonal affective disorder, are those really strong depression symptoms? Are they a variety based on person? Can you just talk a little bit about what the symptoms are?
Sure. So with depression just in general, some patients or individuals will exhibit signs of weight gain, again, not feeling like wanting to do activities that they typically do on a normal basis, just agitation or irritation, just not feeling themselves. So those are a lot of the symptoms that come with just depression, but also specifically seasonal affective disorder, which is a form of depression. In some cases, you do have patients that already have a known history of depression, will have worsening symptoms, of course, which could potentially contribute to, suicidal and maybe possible homicidal ideations.
And for people that do experience this, is this a annual thing for people if they don't receive that right treatment or care?
It can be specifically to those patients or those individuals that, maybe the month of December, is a constant reminder of some sort of trauma that may have happened during that time or mourning the loss of a family member or a friend. And, it could potentially cause, that exacerbation and just be more of an annual thing because it's a constant reminder that when that month or, that time of the year had come by, they're like, hey, my depression's back, and they're having the constant reminder. So, taking that into consideration, with um, treatment, if they already have depression, talking to their physician, maybe they need an increase in, an antidepressant if they're already on one. But just generally speaking to their primary care doctor, about their concerns to maybe start them on an antidepressant should they not be on one.
So interesting. So, the time of the year can also be triggering in sort of those memories or trauma that have occurred.
Absolutely.
And, in terms of the average person, that might experience the winter blues, or that's what they're calling it, and they want to stay inside, they want to stay in bed. But when do you know when it's that limit or that line of maybe I need to actually seek health care providers' help?
Well, absolutely. So when you feel like your symptoms are just lasting a little bit too long, you start having those thoughts of, hey, would my family be okay if I wasn't here? Would my children, be okay if I wasn't here? That sense of not really caring about life, to include weight gain, significant fatigue. I strongly encourage patients to, seek help and to have those questions answered, as to why they may be having these symptoms.
And in terms of treatment, I know that you said, medication is one option, but what are those treatment options that, patients can take?
Well, first, when you're coming to your provider, we absolutely would like to do, like for myself, we want to do a physical assessment because in some cases, it could be a simple electrolyte imbalance, a hormonal imbalance that could also contribute to depression. It's not always a chemical imbalance in our brain. So when we think about depression, we think about the neurotransmitters. Those are our chemical messengers that live in our brain. So, like serotonin and dopamine that have service several functions. They help with our appetite. They help with our sleep patterns, but most importantly, it affects our mood. So, of course, coming to your PCP, we do recommend that you did a full assessment, and that's to include blood work. If it's a simple electrolyte imbalance, such as, potassium, or maybe even just a simple vitamin deficiency, such as vitamin D, that can too mimic depression symptoms, as well as your thyroid. If your thyroid levels are off, that can also contribute to, those depression symptoms as well. So getting a full good assessment by your PCP to kind of differentiate between is this truly depression or not is important. And so that in that case, we can make a definitive answer and then we can treat you appropriately.
Interesting. And I mean, I'm sure in your practice you say this to your patients, but blood work in general is just so important. It seems from conversations like this, where it's just a good baseline to have, if something were to go awry, just that yearly checkup of, what are you seeing with patients?
Absolutely. So I have had patients come in that have expressed, concerns of, weight gain, not feeling like themselves. And like, I mentioned before, it has been their thyroid that's been either overactive or underactive, or like I said, a simple vitamin deficiency such as vitamin D. And so first we like to trial on, maybe a supplement or, looking deeper into that thyroid gland, and if it is maybe hypothyroidism, we would start them on, the specific medication. And then we would want to follow up closely just to make sure that their symptoms are getting better as time persists. But if they're not, of course, we would want to revisit the depression symptoms in regards to maybe it is a chemical imbalance. And so, with that, if it is in turn a chemical imbalance with our neurotransmitters, we will start them on, an antidepressant as well. We can also refer to psychiatry or psychology, excuse me. They can do cognitive behavioral therapy, just kind of talking and therapeutic communication. But also with psychologists, they in turn use light therapy. So when we go back into talking to about seasonal affective disorder, we know that during the spring and summer months, the sun is shining, we kind of naturally start to feel better, right? The sun is shining, the wind is blowing in our hair, the it's just warm. The sun naturally will increase our serotonin or our neurotransmitters in our brain to naturally make us feel better.
And based on what you're saying, I think it seems really optimistic for patients to know, with providers like you, that the option is to go in to sort of figure out exactly maybe what either chemical imbalance or imbalance in your body is sort of leading maybe to some of these disorders, if not other issues.
Right.
And I know that in the video playing, between us, they're showing, lights that you can use to sort of bring out that sunlight, just at home in your room. Have you seen or heard sort of just real life examples of patients using those and seeing a difference in their morning, or just how they're waking up to an alarm or how they're feeling during the day? I mean, do you hear about those stories or?
Especially patients that have sought treatment with, a psychotherapist, they do the artificial light therapy. So they actually have a pretty big light in the room, and they have noticed some changes in the patient's moods. They're smiling a little bit more. So in turn, that lets us know that yes, artificial sun or artificial light can actually naturally increase those neurotransmitters or chemical receptors in our brain.
That's interesting because I think maybe you see them a little bit more commonly just in sort of everyday. I know that people, even without seasonal affective disorder, do like that naturally waking up, with more of that sunlight. That is helpful for them, to get out of bed to sort of get their day started.
Yes. Right.
In terms of, I did want to ask one question, which it seems different, than most people that experience seasonal affective disorder in the winter. But in sort of, preparing for this conversation, I've also seen that some people can also experience this in the summer. Not as many, but it is, maybe it has to do with, a moment triggering them, similar to what you were saying earlier. But those summer months can also, lead to depression for some people.
And it's just another form of seasonal affective disorder. It's very rare to see it, but it actually is called summer sad onset seasonal affective disorder. So, how we would potentially see patients that have those winter blues in the winter time, there in some cases have patients that will have those same exact symptoms, but only in the summertime.
Wow. No,
Right.
it's just, yeah, no, it seems so interesting just because, based on what you've said and what research shows, with the sun and with all of these elements that are sort of helping your body, to experience that in the summer does seem, I'm sure it's shocking to that individual as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But again, just reiterating, like, if you're having these symptoms, please reach out. Don't try to really handle it on your own. Seek professional help so that, we can differentiate between the two as whether, is this something that is just a simple, abnormality in your blood that we can fix, or is this truly a chemical imbalance that could be, exacerbating depression symptoms?
And are there any, I guess, maybe more holistic things or preventative treatments or things, if you know that this has been an issue for you in the past, that maybe is there a way to get ahead of it, leading into the season, knowing that you need to take vitamin D or speak with your doctor before sort of that season hits again?
Vitamin D, I take it myself every morning. It does help with energy as well as immune support. So, taking, a low dose of vitamin D daily can absolutely keep your levels from, decreasing. And so, when you do follow up with your PCP, they check your vitamin D, it's already at a normal level. So, that's kind of one check mark, off the box and whatnot, especially when if you are still having those symptoms that they know that it's not, a vitamin deficiency, and then we can look a little bit more deeper into. Um,
And then I did want to ask too, the statistics across the board say this does seem to affect more women than men. Do you see that in your practice? Is that something that alarms you, or do you think it's triggered by something, or, maybe medical professionals aren't sure yet?
well, I'm not really sure, but I do see kind of like an average, on men and women that do come in for these exact symptoms. Um, yes, I have seen that women are more affected from this form of depression, but in my practice, I have seen, pretty average of both men and women coming in.
And I know that we are more south, but I think that in terms of the seasons here in Hampton Roads, we definitely see them all. And I think while we haven't had snow and maybe some of those more, winter elements, we've had those very cold, dark mornings and those dark nights, for people that are here. And while I think, maybe in the northeastern states, or if you're closer to sort of that all dark black most of the day, we still do really get those seasons here.
Yes, yes, we do. Virginia, we've always had pretty erratic, weather here because, of the coastal weather and whatnot. So, hey, yeah, it definitely can cause a teeter totter and, people's symptoms and whatnot.
And then in terms of, maybe in early spring, whether that means being able to get outside, maybe that means, starting your day or ending your day with a little bit more light, does that impact at least even just the general population in sort of just experiencing maybe a mild version of sort of winter blues?
Yes, that can definitely impact, hopefully we get an early spring, considering, Groundhog's Day was just on the second and whatnot. So hopefully we will see, a lot of smiles, and patients are just individuals, in the Hampton Roads area, not only feeling better emotionally, but physically.
Absolutely. And, is there anything else, Angela, in terms of, it doesn't even have to be related to seasonal affective disorder, but you just want patients to know, going forward about either speaking to their healthcare provider if something is going on, or just being, you know, I guess not feeling ashamed or maybe not feeling bad about coming in to visit, even if it's a smaller problem.
No judgment zone, especially when you're coming into your primary care's office. You know, this is not our first rodeo with other patients that have also expressed these same concerns. And just being able to talk to your patients and just getting a good medication or a medical background on them, knowing their history, so that we can kind of put all these puzzle pieces together so that we together can make those decisions, and come to, like I said, an agreement on to what we can do for you. Again, it takes physical assessments, maybe some blood work, and, just talking it out. Talking to your patients is very important, and that will give you a lot of information that you need so that you can make a definitive diagnosis and treat them appropriately.
I love that, the no judgment zone. And, it is good to know that other patients obviously have been there, done that. They've come in, they've asked you for help, or they've asked their healthcare provider for help. So no one should feel alone, coming to anyone.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, Angela, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to, talk about today or just mention before we wrap up?
There's always help. There again, just reaching out to your primary care provider, and just making sure that, they listen to you, you know. Um, so yeah, that's really it. Just making sure that, everything is taken care of and that again, you get the proper treatment. And if we need to, refer to maybe psychiatry or psychology, then we can do so at that time. We
Uh,
just want to get.
right. No, absolutely. And I think that advocating for yourself, going to the doctor's office. And as you said, that sort of goes for more than just seasonal affective disorder, obviously. If there's anything that seems off about your body or your behavior, to know that you have that resource, I think is huge.
Getting your annual physicals every year, just to keep up and make sure that everything is, going appropriately is definitely imperative. So I strongly encourage everyone to get an annual physical with their PCPs.
Great. Well, Angela, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And, to anyone tuning in, I'll link Angela's profile as well as more information on wavy.com, where you can find out more about seasonal affective disorder, find out resources if you do need help, and then, make sure, as Angela said, to reach out to whether it's your, PCP, your family doctor, people in town, your friends or family, I guess, if you do need that assistance. So, Angela, again, thank you so much.
For having me.